Okay, so I'm going to talk about WordsEye. WordsEye is a system that lets you create 3D scenes by describing them with language. So we kind of think of it as a way of letting people who are creative be able to express their creativity in a way that they couldn't before. So I'll just give some background about what motivated this, show a little, demo it a little bit, show what some of our users are doing. We've been in beta for about 7 months, and just what we've learned in beta a little bit too. Okay, so the background of this is that if you look at new technologies coming out, language processing is kind of becoming pervasive. So there's you have voice-activated things. You have Siri. There's a example here where Siri is in a car, be able to give directions and so forth. There's Amazon's Echo does language processing at the home to control things. There's a whole bunch of startups in language processing. So there's one, TextIQ. This is another one coming out of Columbia University, where we came from. And I said there's probably 5 in the computer science department just in language processing doing startups. There's, of course, Google Translate. There's word clouds. There's all kinds of things where language is becoming a primary medium for controlling activity on the computers and on social media and so forth. Also, sort of along with that is computer graphics, and particularly on social media, there's all kinds of graphics tools, and these are becoming pervasive too. So I think there's a statistic that on Facebook, about 70% of the activity is engendered by photos that people post. So it's always visual-oriented things, get people involved, get them to have an attitude or some opinion about something. So there's a bunch of tools. There's JibJab, which lets you have animated, you put a cutout of your face or somebody's face and create an animated video from that. There's bit strips. There's Giphy that lets you share animated GIFs. Instagram, of course. There's emojis. There's all kinds of things where tools that help you create visual things, but they tend to be very canned, templated. So you can't really create anything you can imagine. So that's where 3D graphics comes in. 3D graphics, it's used in films, so it has this promise. Basically, you can imagine anything, and you could actually create it in 3D graphics if you have the skill. The problem, though, is that it just tends to be very difficult to use. So you have to learn complicated tool sets like this. I used to actually create authoring tools for 3D graphics, and I never had a chance to use them because it's just such a tedious process to do anything in them. And of course, there's things that try to make it easier, but it still remains difficult. It requires artistic skill, it's expensive, and it just takes a long time to do. And both long in terms of learning curve and in terms of the process of doing it. So what WordsEye does is to create scenes with language. So if you step back and you can create a scene with language, you're describing something at a much higher level, and you can actually get something out in using a tool everybody knows, which is language. So this is an example with a scene created by WordsEye. So we said the flower is in the desert, so it brings in the flower, puts it on a desert landscape. The hummingbird is above the flower, puts it above it. Then we make the hummingbird lean to the front, so it sort of its beak is downward. Then we put an ear next to it, so maybe it's hearing the humming. Change the way it's facing, put it a certain distance above the ground, and then you can put light sources in scene. So you can light the scene, you can add different materials, make things reflective, and so forth. So now I'll just give a quick demo to kind of show it in action. Yeah. I won't be able to hold this though. I type. Can you hold it? You can. Thanks. Okay, so let me clear this out. I'll just create a simple scene, and then we'll go back. I'll describe some more stuff. So I'll create a scene. I'll just describe some objects. I'll say the man is a foot to the left of the alien. Okay, so this will the sentence will get parsed and get understood, and then it'll create a scene with that, and it loads it in. So now this is actual 3D scene. I could rotate around and so forth. And I'm going to change. I don't like that alien it chose. I'll pick a different one. So I'll pick this guy here, and I'll pick a different man. So you're using actually a combination. I could say use language to describe certain things, or I could just choose this way. So we have let's pick one of these characters down here. How about this guy? Okay, there he is. And now another thing you could just do graphically, or just through the menu, you could pick a different background. Or I could say he's in the desert, like we did in that other scene. We'll pick sort of this Monument Valley. So very quickly, combination of language and choosing a few objects, you have a 3D scene that is really, pretty interesting to look at. And then we'll add some other stuff into it. So I'll say, first off, we'll make the man face the alien. Maybe he's looking at him. And I could, rather than saying the man is facing the alien, I could say he is facing the alien. So it figures out what that means. And then let's put a UFO in the scene. So I'll say the silver UFO. So you can give materials, colors to any objects in your scene. Silver UFO is, say, 4 feet above the alien, and it is maybe 20 feet behind the alien. Okay, and let's do one more thing. Let's add a light source. So this is doing ray tracing in the cloud. So ray tracing lets you add lights into the scene. It actually computes where all the lights go, and you get the shadows and the colors from those particular lights. So let's say a yellow light is in front of the man. Okay, so add a bunch of stuff in, I hit display, and it'll find those other objects and put them into the scene. Okay, so now we have the man facing the alien, we have a UFO in it, and we have a light source, and so forth. So, and then I could add some more lights. I could make it be nighttime maybe, so let's do that. I'll say a cyan light is under the UFO. I'll say it is night. Let's redo that. Okay, so now we have a night scene. And again, you could rotate around. We look at it from different points of view. And this is something you can't do in 2D because it's a 3D scene. You can look at it from different points of view. You can swap one object for another. Maybe I don't want this particular guy. I want, in that pose, maybe I want him doing this sort of silly sort of half handstand thing. And we'll get him like that. So just by picking the objects and, yes, we'll go back now. The objects you want, using the language, moving your camera, you have a lot of control over the scene you create. And then you can give it a title and you can share it. So we have a whole sharing capability onto social media. Okay, so I'll just talk a little bit about language processing, what you do there. So as you can see, sort of the entry barrier is a lot less. I don't have to learn a lot of tools. You can describe things very simply. There's no special training needed for that. So but in doing this, you're giving up a lot of control. So in the 3D package I showed earlier, with all of that stuff, you can control everything. But with language, I'm just saying the alien, and I'm saying the UFO, and I'm getting the ones that the system has. I can change the colors, the sizes, and so forth. So you gain in the economy of expression, but you lose in sort of control. Another thing you gain, though, is you're using constraints. So if I said there's a flower pot on the table, and the table is against the wall, the flower pot will move with the table. If you did that in 3D graphics by moving things around, you'd probably have to do a special thing to constrain it separately, or move them twice. So language actually expresses it more the way that we think in terms of constraints. Another advantage of language is that it uses your imagination more, or at least in a different way. So you kind of think of something, you think of how to say it, and then you can describe it. And that's sort of a fun process. It's a different process anyway. And then this opens up different kinds of applications. So one thing we've looked at, in addition to using this as a creative tool for people to express visually on social media, is education. So kids who are reading stories, they can create scenes from their stories. They can learn to spell correctly because the system will give them feedback immediately visually if they don't spell correctly, or if their sentence structure is wrong. It's also amenable to hands-free interfaces. So I'll show an example. One of our artists can't really type very well or spell very well, and he creates his scenes by talking onto his tablet. And then another thing we've actually recently did some tests with is image search. If you think of Google image search, you'll find it does a very good job if the picture exists. But if you have something really imaginative that there is no picture already, you won't find anything for that. So if I want to find a giant hamburger above a dog or something, you're not going to find that in any scene, any picture that's out there. But if you're creative and you want something like that, you'd have to create it. So WordsEye, you could actually, in a search process, you could actually get a scene of that form. Okay, so I just want to show a little how language is flexible. So we have a particular scene here. This is and you could say it all these different ways. So we have this green tigers left of the big chair, so there is a green tiger to the left of the big chair, a green tiger is to the left of the big chair, a green tiger is to the left of the chair is big. You can describe things in any number of ways, and if you go back to looking at an interface, standard graphical interfaces, there's one way to do it. You do it the way the programmer defined it. So language is flexible, and it lets you say things in a whole bunch of different ways because it understands what is being said. So you can vary the syntax. You change your word choice. I might say the animal is next to the lounge chair, and it might get that same scene. You could also be vague or precise. I could say it's next to it, 2 feet to the left. You can give specificity. You give exact sizes rather than big. I could say how big. And there's also sentence granularity. I could do one sentence, and I said there's a green tiger left of the big chair. Or I could say green tiger is to the left of the chair is big. So you can do it more the way you want, and there's a lot of flexibility that way. So as far as how it does this is sort of schematically the process that it goes through. You have your sentence. So here's one variant of that. The green tiger is 1 foot left of the big chair, or to the left of the big chair. And then the system will parse it into a syntax tree showing the syntactic structure. So you get noun phrases, verb phrases, adjectives modifying things. Then that's transformed into a semantic representation. So the semantics is more of what the actual meaning of the sentence is. So in this case, we have there's a node here, there's a green color, there's a tiger, and this is just saying that the color of the tiger is green. And we're also saying that the same tiger is 1 foot to the left of the chair, which is over there. So the idea is that the same object can be referenced by multiple relations, multiple properties, and the semantics represents that. And so it could come from different sentences, in fact. So when you get a long scene with many things, we referred to the man a couple times. He was left of something, he was facing it. That same object is referred to once, and the semantics ties it together. Okay, then this is a little, I don't know if I will talk too much about this. This is just when you refer to something again a second time, is it the same object or a different object? And there's a lot of processing to try to figure that out. So if we have this, the cat is on the table, the cat is sleeping, that would be one cat. But if you said a cat, 2 down, the cat is on the table, the black cat is sleeping, that's probably implying 2 different cats. Or you could say the cat is on the table, the animal is sleeping. It knows that a cat is a type of animal. It will make that merging and say there's 1 cat. Sometimes it would refer to something else, like it is cloudy. The man is on the table, it is cloudy. That's non-referential, and it would be something else. So there's a whole bunch of features that go into determining that, and we have some heuristics to do that, to make it a usable system by referring to the same object multiple times. This is the just sort of overall structure of the program. It might not be readable, but basically you take input text, and then it figures out what the words are. That's the lexical and morphological analysis. Then it does the parsing. I showed you the parse tree before. Then reference resolution, that's determining these different references to the same object. Are they the same or different? And then there's a graphical analysis that says, okay, well, how are these, semantic analysis saying, how are these actually, what is the meaning of this actual, in terms of semantic primitives that we have? That turns into graphical analysis, which is, okay, well, you know some general semantics, but what does to the left of really mean? Is that related? That's similar to the right of? So figuring out how the scene coheres in a graphical way. At that point, we can actually construct the scene. We load in objects, and then it can be, ideally, at some point, we might want to have VR output to this, but right now we go to our renderer, and that will create the actual rendered picture of the scene. And then that goes to this is all a web interface, it goes to the web. So this is showing the platforms that we have and sort of the user types we envision for it. We have a web interface. We've been beta for 7 months. We have around almost 20,000 users have registered to use it. We've just been launching our beta for our mobile app, and that's just starting now. And we sort of see 2 different kinds of users, more artistic art creation on the web, and on the mobile app, more more communication. So I'll just show some scenes very quickly. This is some abstract art creating by one of our users. This is, I mentioned someone else creating stuff with voice. This is our user who does that. He doesn't type too much, he'll just talk into it. So you can get humor that way. You can add captions onto scenes after you've created them. You can express visual opinion. Here you can upload a photo and actually have some social commentary based on that. Tell stories. This is one user likes to do a lot of this. She does these night scenes. And here's one sort of reimagining a story, Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall. You could do very quick things, one sentence, do an emoji type thing. You can create other kind of worlds, sort of fantastical worlds, and then you can tie scenes together. So we have what we call visual banter, where someone posts a scene to our gallery, and then someone else will reply with another scene. So it's a visual reply rather than a textual reply. And since it's easy to do that, you can just change the scene very quickly. If they give the text, you can just modify it directly. And this is, I guess I'm done now, but should I finish or? Okay, this is my last slide, I think. So basically what we've learned, we've been in beta 7 months. We found people really like new features and new content. As soon as we add some new stuff in, they start to use it. There's visual banter where people will riff on each other's scenes. That just kind of happens naturally. People share scenes out to Tumblr and to Reddit and places like that, and we get sometimes communities of people with common interests coming in. So we had a whole bunch of Vaporwave users come in. I didn't even know what that was. It's sort of this retro graphical style, and it's really interesting to see that. We have a token system where you can do high-def renders, and users actually like the tokens. Like we give them extra tokens if they're on every day, then they get more tokens that way, and that kind of motivates them to use the system. I think giving a title is a very important part of the creative process. It's not just creating the scene, but you can give it a title afterwards. It's kind of like those New Yorker cartoons where you do that. And then users have requested all kinds of other stuff that we're kind of busy implementing. One last slide is we've been doing tests in education. There was a test we did in Harlem a couple years ago where kids had a significant improvement using WordsEye when they were reading stories, and they had to create scenes related to those stories, and we did a test before and after, and it showed improvement based on that. So that's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. A little bit over time, so to have 2 quick questions.
I don't need that. You can upload your own images?
Yes, so you can upload your own photos into the scene. So that one I showed earlier with,
maybe video.
Let's see, this one here, that photo of the starving children.
Can it be video?
Can you output video?
Can it be video?
Oh, can you upload video? Yeah, not currently, because it's basically creating a static scene, and so it has to put a picture texture mapped on the objects.
Yeah. It looks pretty. The English database or just the US database?
Sometimes the spellings we handle both if we can, but sometimes it doesn't. But yeah.
I have a question here, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah. Okay. How far do you guys think you are from games? People being able to make games just from writing sentences.
Well, that's interesting. It depends what kind of game it is. So there's casual games where it's sort of puzzles and maybe here's a scene, create the same thing that looks like it. Guess what this is. Creating an animated game with a shooter game or something like that. That's more, but potentially we could output the graphics from this as a level or part of a level on a game or an area in a game. Yeah. So.
All right, on that note, thank you very much. This was super interesting.